fancy yourself as a runner, eh?
He's more than a runner. He's top bloody athlete.
Girls run. Men box.
You what? Only girls run? Based on the Gallipoli campaign during the First World War, which cost the lives of over 8,500, the movie focuses on Archie Hamilton, played by Mark Lee, living in Australia. He's a decent runner who starts to become quite successful. Meanwhile, Frank Dunn, played by Mel Gibson, is a bum who's flat broke, but also an experienced runner, and enters a race to win some cash, but he can't believe it when he's actually defeated by Hamilton. They soon strike up a friendship. Archie wants to enlist in the war, but is deemed too young at just 18. Yeah, apparently in this movie you have to be 21 to enlist in the army. Although in Australia in 1914, the age requirements were between 18 and 35. I mean, if you were younger than 21, you still need parental permission, so I guess the movie's right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So he instead decides to leave town, hop a freight train to Perth, ditching his running, changing his identity, and re-enlists, taking a reluctant Frank with him. Frank fails at just riding a horse, so settles for the infantry, separating the duo, but reuniting months later in Egypt. Archie's identity is soon discovered, but instead of being snitched on, they're in need of a message runner, but he declines and offers Frank instead. In the trenches, the famous Gallipoli attack begins, where the troops are gunned down by Turks with machine guns. The commander, well, commands that they continue the attack, and the same thing happens again. Allegedly, some of their marker flags were spotted in the Turkish trenches, so they're led to believe that they've been partially successful. While the attacks go on, Frank is running between people to deliver messages, and finally gets word to end the attack, but by the time he gets back, well, it's too late.
No, mate, not quite.
This did skew historical facts, however. The film depicts the English commander as the one issuing the attacks, whereas in reality there were many Australian commanders, and two in particular called Hughes and Antill, who were left to blame. Bastards. I guess it was to take some blame off the Aussies, you know, Michael Bay, self-fornication for my country kind of thing, so let's blame the British. The director Peter Ware actually admitted that he deeply regretted the decision. Never actually explained why he changed historical facts though. We'll just assume that he hates us. Furthermore, at the end, Gibson's about to call off the attack and it's too late, but this again wasn't how the real life events actually took place. In reality, the fourth wave of soldiers actually just charged without orders, leading to their deaths. Their own fault really then.
No.
Peter Ware had actually visited Gallipoli as early as 1976, where he discovered an empty Eno bottle on the beach and wanted to make a film about the campaign ever since. He quickly wrote out an outline and passed it to David Williamson to turn it into a screenplay, but it went through many different variations. Williamson also took parts from Bill Gamage's book The Broken Years, which holds a collection of diary excerpts from around 1,000 or so soldiers that actually fought in Gallipoli. Originally, the South Australian Film Corporation didn't like the first draft and refused to fund the $4.5 million budget requested. In May 1979, Peter Ware asked Patricia Lavelle to produce, and the writing of the final script began as Lavelle successfully raised $850,000, but it was just too low.
That's not good enough.
In May 1980, Rupert Murdoch and Robert Stigwood formed a film company called Associated R&R Films. Patricia Lavelle approached them with the script and they agreed to fund it, but only if the budget would remain under $3 million. It came out around $2.8 million, which was the highest budgeted Australian film in history at the time. Fittingly, Rupert Murdoch's father, Keith, was a journalist during World War I and had visited Gallipoli in September of 1915. It was meant to be.
God bless you, boy.
I'd auditioned for an earlier film and he told me right up front, I'm not going to cast you for this part. You're not old enough, but thanks for coming in. I just wanted to meet you. He told me he wanted me for Gallipoli a couple of years later because I wasn't the archetypal Australian. He had Mark Lee, the angelic-looking ideal Australian kid, and he wanted something of a modern sensibility. He thought the audience needed someone to relate to of their own time. Weirdly, Peter Ware actually admitted that he thought Mel Gibson was full of himself and had no grand career ambitions whatsoever.
Okay. You're on.
The whole theme of the picture is the loss of innocence, Archie being only 18 years old. And an early scene has his uncle Jack read the Jungle Book, explaining how Mowgli reached manhood and must now leave the family of wolves that raised him. Gallipoli was the birth of a nation. It was the shattering of a dream for Australia. They had banded together to fight the Hun and died by the thousands in a dirty little trench war. Gibson also described Gallipoli as not really a war movie. That's just the backdrop. It's the story of two young men. Despite not being that successful internationally, it helped promote Australian cinema and the overseas career of Mel Gibson, who you may have heard of. I mean, he went on to do a few films here or there.
Pretty enthusiastic.
Despite not being entirely historically accurate, I really enjoyed this movie. It's not one I'd rush out to watch again and again, but it's still a decent watch. As Mel Gibson said, the story is about the friendship. The war is merely a subplot. This is basically what Pearl Harbor should have been. In this, I was actually invested in the story and the characters, so when it got to that dreaded moment, I actually felt sympathy. Archie was a really likeable character, and Mark Lee brought him to life perfectly. I do think though that Mel Gibson is the best part of the film, and the main reason is because it's so unlike any role you'd ever expect from him. You'd usually expect him to be Archie, dragging the other person of war. He and Mark Lee have great chemistry together, and I think their styles bounce off each other really well. The change of Gibson's pace complements it all so seamlessly.
Thank you.
I love that they merge two plots together at once. We get the running thing and then the war issue, and they both culminate together perfectly. Many other films try this, and sometimes it feels cluttered and overcrowded, but here, Gibson starts using his running to even dodge bullets. Unlikely, but it looks awesome. And to pass on messages between people. At the end, Archie realises that he doesn't really stand a chance and ditches his gun and tries to sprint to freedom and unfortunately fails, but it all comes together and I think it's done to a T. The comedy is great, even if a lot of it is unintentional.
Men box. Lay off, Les. He can run faster than you can ride!
In fact, I want to see more of this character. He's completely insane.
Les fell down! What happened? Les fell down! Archie, my friend, you win!
Get him his own movie.
Come on. Aye. Right. Teeth aren't all that good.
You're supposed to shoot the enemy, mate, not fight him.
That line is gold.
Teeth aren't all that good.
You're supposed to shoot the enemy, mate, not fight him.
You're supposed to shoot the enemy, not bite them. There's a weird segue where they get ripped off by a gypsy and get their revenge.
Revenge!
By trashing his shop to get their money back. Only for...
Hey, fellas. That wasn't the shop. This is it here. Hey, fellas, it was the wrong shop.
That is hilarious. I also have to compliment the musical score. This doesn't have much music, but when it does, it is so unique. Honestly, you've never heard a score so original before. It's usually during running scenes we get this electronic music, and it is awesome.
Go like a whip. Deeper. Come on, deeper, deeper. Come on, deeper, deeper. From here, boy, here. That's it. Now, loosen up.
This isn't PG. So Frank leaves Arch, and you can immediately tell that he is so dead.
Oh. See you when I see you.
But if I see you first.
Oh, dude, it was nice knowing you. He even writes a farewell letter. It is so obvious. Doesn't take away the feels, though. Really unique film. Really enjoyed it. I'd say check it out, but it doesn't have as much replay value there for me.